so much for coming. Thank you for this meeting, the administrative, thank you for being here today. We got several things we need to do and to do them very proficiently. Sister Erica? We've gone over our minutes. The minutes stand
Motion to-
before you.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded that we approve our minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's done. Thank you. Let's have, Pam, if you would come now and talk a little bit, referencing our boards and commissions.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, and thank you for the rest of the committee members. You all did an amazing job as an administrative policy committee to put together a boards and commissions handbook, to talk about the process, and to really lay that out in a well-organized way. But we still are having a little bit of some hiccups about the process. Still not having quite as many applicants or candidates to apply. And so we wanted to see, staff wanted to see, Ashley and myself, and Ashley, you can come on up to the table, wanted to see if you all would be open to having a work session where we can go over it with the entire council at one time to really talk it out and to talk about all the things that you guys put in place to make the process work as smoothly as possible.
And I would add, not just we put in place, we voted on the boards and commissions. So I think a refresher will be, like, it was a unanimous support on that handbook, so yeah.
If we vote, we approved the handbook,
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
but there has not been a whole lot of, for lack of a better word, a whole lot of conversation.
Yes,
Internal conversation.
yes.
About how it works. There are some parts that I need to be refreshed on,
Yes.
which would, allow us a good opportunity to have a work session regarding this.
Yes. So we would like to just dig a little bit deeper, go over some of the things that you all put in place, refresh everybody's memory on how the process works, and also give a little bit of a broader audience to citizens about boards and commissions so that we can get a little bit more interest in people applying. So we feel like if we can have some of those discussions in a work session, just to highlight the boards and commissions, how important it is, the processes and procedures you guys have put in place, and also talk about, the way that you all make your decisions. Ashley has spoken to many of you about the boards and commissions process in an effort to get your feedback in addition to finding out what's working, what's not working, how we can shore up some things to make it better. So we'd like to add that to our discussion as well. So plainly, what we need you to do is to ask us to we're asking you to help us refer it to a work session, and we have a collective discussion about it.
Well, it would certainly be good if we did something like that.
Yes, sir.
Heretofore, we have not, for an example, we've been inundated with paper applications. What about that online capability?
Yes, sir.
Possibility. It would certainly be helpful if that kind of orientation could have some discussion around that. And because I'm sure that my colleagues are anxious to get folk on boards and agencies, boards and commissions. And sometimes we have to ask for an application.
Yes, sir.
Let's do it the other way. What you all think?
Two quick comments.
Sure.
That I like when we get to the work session, which I'm all in favor of. One is I would like to at least discuss the concept of maybe committee nominations or committee reviews and have a committee,
Vetting process?
a committee to promote somebody to the full board as part of the vetting process. The other thing is I think we should have a internal approval queue of an application, because when I see these things and someone's in District 7 and all this, or someone lives in Lexington County and all this other stuff, so I want to make sure that we have applicants that are
Eligible.
eligible, and on through an approval queue. So those are the two things I'd like to look at.
And that we're really gonna be mindful, that particularly, because somebody could live in Lexington and work in another different
And
zip
then, and to
code.
make sure we understand what's the requirements, we
Absolutely.
spend more time talking about that kind
Absolutely.
of stuff than we did actually do the person. So I want to make sure that we have staff approval queue that really nails down the legitimacy of a candidate for serving.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Chair, I shared this with Ms. Jenkins, but I think it's also important after we have that work session, just to refresher at the top of each email that you send in terms of the snapshot, just reminding people, this is an odd month, so here's what's coming up. That, you know, this is an even month, so you will be voting on this. Because when we did start that in the beginning, and granted, we passed this 3 years ago, and also you were not on, and Councilman Bailey was not also on. So just reminding people that those systems are put into place to make it easy, so it starts to become like ingrained in our culture, the same way we have public hearings for planning the first meeting of the month. We'll then start to remember, okay, it's this month, meaning we're gonna be voting on these things, giving us a little bit more time. I think just continuing, I know it's, that repetition though will help.
For sure.
Yeah,
That's a great idea.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
We'll add that.
But I'll make well, we can't. Is there consensus? I guess you have to ask for consensus to refer this, right?
Well, you got to, yeah, let's do that. Let's ask for consensus to do that.
Yes.
Auditor.
To refer to
Move
work
forward.
session.
Yeah,
We can move forward with that.
Okay, great. We're excited about that. We've got a lot of, ideas
There's a lot of,
from all of you all.
That's a lot of stuff.
little things.
Well, there are a lot of little committees, yeah.
A lot of stuff.
There's a lot of little things that we talked about initially, 2.5, 3 years ago. We did not dig into the, for lack of a better term, we did not dig into the dirt
Yes, sir.
to flesh out what we needed to do and what this council needed to do to make that a reality in the lives of people. I think it is crucially important. You spend a lot of time looking at zip coded areas that are 29203, 29204, and the other zip coded area. But when you look at Lexington County, and you look at a home address being in Lexington County and a downtown address, it poses a real problem.
It does, and that's something that you all asked us to consider as well, whether they reside within the city limits. So as it pertains to City of Columbia boards that are only managed by us, they reside within the city limits. And if there are applicants that do not, but basically the emphasis.
Did we adhere to that?
Yes, as it pertains to the City of Columbia boards that
Yeah,
are not managed
We
by
did.
outside
We looked at the
agencies.
language.
Yes. There was one board that did not fit that and is a board that's managed by an outside agency. That residency requirement does not apply to them, and that was established through
Well,
legal as well.
I think there needs to be some real truth conversation about that.
So as of now, you all have been sticking with that, yes, sir.
Yeah,
And-
we've been pretty
Well,
consistent.
we want to be ultrally
I like it.
consistent with
Ultrally.
that.
Absolutely.
Because we do run into problems and we do run into situations where, we do run into situations. So I think we can say yes.
Okay,
Let's go ahead and consensually agree
great.
that we do a work session just on boards and commissions.
Okay, so we will ask Ms. Erica when the next work session will be scheduled, and we'll make that one of the topics that we focus on.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good. All right,
Thank you.
we okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.
We're good.
Miss Erica, let's talk about 50 plus 1.
Interesting concept, right?
Let's talk about 50 plus 1
Okay.
and whether or not conceptually that's what we want to do.
All right.
Erica,
Yes, sir.
go ahead.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon to the Administrative Policy Committee members. I've prepared just a brief presentation. It consists of an approach for more efficient elections, and I hope that You will learn something new about our election process and then change your mind about what we're doing. So our current voting system, as established by Section 6-4, it calls for a majority of the votes cast. So a candidate with the majority of the votes wins. Majority is defined as 50 plus 1 in this instance. And so what this has led to is the city of Columbia having to conduct runoffs in certain elections where candidates don't receive the majority vote. And over the years, we have had this discussion, I believe, recently in the Administrative Policy Committee, and we just wanted to bring it back to get clarification on where you all stand with this. So just to make it a little more plain, there are two options. South Carolina law allows us to have a majority voting system or a plurality voting system. Majority is where a candidate must secure more than 50% of the votes to win. But plurality allows for the candidate who receives the most votes to win. So you'll see in our diagram here, the red dot won't go on the screen, but you'll see with the plurality and both options, there are 5 candidates. And the candidate red has the most votes and would be declared the winner. But under the majority system, the candidate red had to receive more than 50% of the vote. Any questions about that so far? Pretty simple, right? So with a majority voting system, as we've stated a couple of times, the candidate receiving over 50% of the vote wins. If no candidate receives a majority, then a runoff election is necessary. The challenges with that is that we're the only municipality in Richland County using this system. And there's a cost associated with it. What I found in my research is that cost, our election costs have varied over the years, but definitely whenever you have to have a second election, you have to hire more poll workers, reserve facilities, and things of that nature that add to the cost, which in most instances aren't budgeted for because I can't anticipate when we're going to have a runoff and when we won't. And it extends the electoral process and leads to voter fatigue. So if a voter has voted on election day, which is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of odd number years, they may not want to go and vote 2 weeks later. They may feel like I voted once. Why am I being required to vote again? And so that's where the voter fatigue sets in. And when it's in November, the runoff is closer to Thanksgiving holiday, so you get less voter turnout. With the plurality system, the candidate receiving the most votes wins. There's no need for a runoff. You have a quicker resolution. You know that day who the winner is, and then the election commission meets 2 days later, and you know for sure that that winner is confirmed. And again, it keeps the election costs lower, and it encourages broader participation.
Erica,
Yes.
let me ask you a question. Price differential.
Yes.
What does it cost? What does it cost the city?
Anywhere, I've seen costs from anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 to conduct a runoff. Regular elections cost anywhere from $120,000 to $180,000. And we really want to have a focus where we can drive up voter participation. Since we are spending that amount of money, we want to see more than 10 to 12% of our registered voters showing up to vote.
So what are the disadvantages? I mean, obviously, this is something you guys have raised before. Why have we continued to stay the only?
I think it's been about timing, that maybe our timing wasn't right. So I tend to focus on this when it's close to an election. And so I tried to be more intentional this time, saying it is election season, but it's not a city election. And I think it's just been about timing, Dr. Bustles.
I personally like our system, and the reason is to me, voting is a little bit like a football game. It's designed to be long enough. Everybody like that one? Designed to be long enough to end up with the best winner. Okay, so in other words, if a football game was 2 quarters, it would be less designed around having given everybody long enough to win. So in my mind, instead of voter fatigue, it's more about voter commitment. So I kind of like the system because I think you're going to find out, and I know everybody else does it, but I think you'll find out that we don't get enough votes in the city anyway. You may probably you're likely to end up with less votes voting versus more with the new system because your vote is actually less committed and it's more watered down. So I kind of like the way we do things now. I do understand the cost aspect of it, and I understand that's probably the most positive voice for change.
So Erica, if we do 50 plus 1, that's gonna cost us what?
And these days, maybe about $60,000 for a runoff. But if we stick to what we're doing, there is no runoff. The elections are running between 160,000 and 180,000. Of course, it seems like when there's a mayoral race or at-large race, of course, that costs more because all precincts are open.
Other counties do the majority, right? I believe Lexington does.
Not sure about Lexington. I can find out about that. I just know that in Richland County, we're the sole municipality conducting majority elections. I was recently in a clerk's conference last week, and I polled the room, and I believe Olar is the most recent municipality to change from majority to plurality. All other clerks in the room representing various cities across South Carolina are all using the plurality method.
What action do you need from us?
And so if you are so inclined, the next steps would be for you all to review a draft ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, at its next meeting. Once endorsed, it'll be passed over to City Council for their full consideration. And after that, the ordinance will receive 2 readings and no further action is required.
Now, can we do that between now? If we decide to do this, can we do this between now and November?
We can. My recommendation would be, so as to not confuse voters while they're voting in the presidential elections and statewide elections and county elections, I would wait until after election season. So I would look towards December. Maybe pass it in December, so it's already in effect for 2025.
Next election.
Yes. And I understand Mr. Brown's concerns. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, so I certainly appreciate you sharing that. As the clerk, and I'm here to serve in any capacity, but using the last election as an example, you're getting close to Thanksgiving. We're having to, get people excited about voting, but it also requires staff to be on guard as well, not just at the city, but at Richland County. That's at the base of the totem pole, but just something to consider.
Well, it sure sets a precedence for being committed to voting, and I'm all for that.
Absolutely.
But voting that second time in a runoff not only costs us money, but it questions the commitment of that first endeavor in terms of voting, whether or not that's going to be sufficient enough. I got some real reservations about doing it a second time. If we got to do it a second time in terms of a runoff, let's do it that one time and that's it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just thinking out loud, like, I do think that I'm not sold because cost can't be the driving argument for this, because we're talking about people engaging in democracy and in the process of voting. And I think it's very off base to be like, this costs too much. So you get less of an opportunity to vote, and someone with 20% of the vote, if there's 10 candidates running, can win. So that I'm open to thinking about it a little bit more. I just need to understand what the other arguments are in terms of a citizen engaging in the process of voting, what benefits would come to them. Beyond, of course, I understand that the cost to us is immense, but I don't think that's enough to like sway making a huge change when, you know, people are used to a certain way of doing things in the city. So that's kind of where I am right now, where I'd be open to continuing this conversation and thinking through what a modified approach would look like, but I need a couple of more points to really decide if this is the approach we should take.
So would a citizen survey be beneficial, or what type of information?
Yeah, that could be helpful. But I also think that, you know, one of the things that you hear with examples of, say, New York City or others that use the plurality system is that, you know, it may keep people from, you know, new voices and new people that want to run for office from entering the race. So I just want to think through some of those pieces before I make a decision on.
Well, I can buy in, excuse me, I can buy into that. I think if a person casts his or her vote that first time, that's your commitment. I'm committed to that. It's gonna be hard pressed to bring that person in that second time. A part of that conversation ought to be centered around whether or not that person is committed to vote that second time.
That's a good point. I think personally that what it does is I think it reaffirms the process by having two votes. I really do. I think it is designed to elect the right person for that position. And in each of our positions, it's four-year term. So that it's a 4-year commitment, and I don't think 60 grand's worth. The real will of the voter is 50% plus one, in my opinion. I think that's really where we're at, in my mind. So I'm very, happy is a strong word, but I'm very satisfied with our current system of voting in particular, because I think it helps to elect the person that represents the people the best.
I think there needs to be more conversation, either
Absolutely.
way.
I do like your point about, you know, what do the people, you know, we talk a lot about the people, but we don't really know exactly what the people want. But if someone votes, would they be are they more or less inclined to vote the second time? Or are they inclined to vote the first time? I think you might be surprised that people might actually vote. We actually might have less voters the first time, because your vote seems to, if you got 10 people running, your vote doesn't have the same,
Doesn't have the same.
doesn't have the same,
Yeah, I believe
force
I
behind it.
Erica, is it, I'm sorry, Pete.
No, you're right.
Is it possible for us to do a voter survey referencing these particular concerns?
believe we can,
Majority or plurality?
absolutely.
I think it would be helpful in the necessary zip coded areas that we seek an answer to that. We can't do it. The council is gonna be nailed to the wall one way or the other,
Yeah,
because that person who didn't vote, well, I think a survey would probably lend itself to a greater degree of satisfaction on both sides of the coin.
yeah, I agree. And we can definitely work on
we do
that.
that?
We have a tool that is an effective survey tool.
How
So,
do we do that? Do we do that online or?
oh, absolutely, but we can consider other options as well,
Great.
but, you know.
Great. What you think? Oh, Peter's gone. What do you think, Audrey?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity just to hear your thoughts and determine your appetite on this subject matter, because it's something that as staff we've been volleying back and forth, but it was important for us to hear from you all today.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our, thank you for bringing it to the forefront of our attention. Thank you very much. Chief,
Yes, sir.
talk to us a little bit about how we need to get around transportationally.
Without crutches.
We're not. Thank you, Chief, I appreciate that. No pun intended.
Yes, sir. So we touched on this subject briefly several months ago at a public safety committee meeting. And based on the, there was a citizen that spoke at council some time ago, and I think it prompted us to maybe have a further discussion about it. If y'all remember, gentleman, longtime cab driver in the city, spoke and just, talked about the burden that is on the cab drivers versus the, Uber, the rideshare programs. And just at least in my 10 years, rideshare has came online. It's not something that's been around forever and ever, but it's here to stay. And initially, there was a lot of public discussion about how it would be regulated and the fact that it wasn't regulated, so on. And so there is some regulation on the rideshare. There's certainly regulation on the taxi cab system in our city. We do think that it's antiquated. The gentleman made some really good points. It is certainly not, there are some fees that I think are unnecessary, and that would be our recommendation to you, and Sergeant U-Haul is gonna go over this. But also some requirements that I think are probably antiquated and really cost prohibitive or an impediment for anybody that seeks to, operate a taxi company or a cab. But we also strongly, in some of these recommendations to maybe deregulate, we strongly recommend, we've got to register. We've got to maintain a registry and have some accountability for people that we are authorizing to operate a taxi service in our city. So I'll let Sergeant U-Haul speak to that.
Thank you, good afternoon. Appreciate everybody's time. So yes, ride shares, they are regulated. They're called TNCs in South Carolina, Transportation Network Companies. They are regulated under Title 58, Chapter 23. And interestingly enough, all their regulations appear to have mimicked the City of Columbia's ordinances and the police department's processes at the time. So they have things such as vehicle inspections that are required for basic operations, headlights, wipers, horn, reverse lights, things of that nature, tires, things such as that. We have regulations in the City of Columbia. They're passed out in front of you. On the left is current processes that we go by, and on the right is what we're recommending with some strike-throughs. The only thing that isn't standing out that I forgot to highlight is item 12. So currently, if somebody wants to operate a vehicle for hire in the City of Columbia, they have to go through the police department. A driver would have to go through the police department to obtain a chauffeur's license. Okay. Part of that, they'd have to provide a 10-year driving record, a SLED criminal history background, and a notarized chauffeur's application, a physical from a physician of their choice, a TB test, a negative 5-panel drug test, copy of their South Carolina driver's license, hospitality class certificate, which we do waive and grant temporary chauffeur's permit until the next available City of Columbia hospitality class. There's a $30 fee. They would have to also provide 2 passport photos for their chauffeur's permit, which is a cardstock paper that we basically staple passport photos to. And then they would need to go through that process every 3 years to renew their chauffeur's permit. Annually, they would have to come to our annual vehicle for hire inspections, at which point we would go through the vehicle list of all vehicle for hires in the City of Columbia. We inspect each and every one for turn signals, headlights, wipers, horns, spare tire, fire extinguishers, things that are required through the state level under the Motor Carrier Act. And then we put them on a known distance course that we've measured out, and we've had traffic engineering confirm our measurements is exactly 1 mile. And we do that with the meters on, but the time off. It gives us an ability to ensure that they are not overcharging based on rates established by city council. Once that comes back complete, we apply one of these meter seals to the meter, we fix it in there, snap off the end, and then the meter seal matches a sticker that we affix to the window of every vehicle for hire. And it has the meter seal. It's a way for us to verify there's no, nothing foul going to play, as it relates to charging people based on rates established. What we're recommending is to keep our vehicle for hire inspections, our annual vehicle for hire inspections. We would still want them to come and get a chauffeur's permit, but we want to do away with basically a lot of the extra stuff, the red tape. We want to do away with the need for a physical and a TB test. If the Department of Motor Vehicles believes you're a sound mind to drive and operate a vehicle, we don't feel you should intervene in that. Negative 5-panel drug test is something that's cost prohibited, and again, it's something they're gonna have to do every 3 years. It's antiquated. If somebody knows they have to get a drug test, there's nothing preventing them from staying clean for a week or two, taking the test and fooling the system entirely. If there was impairment, it would be found through the legal process of driving under the influence and other criminal charges. We want to do away with the fees and change the renewal to a process every 10 years, which is what the city of Columbia previously had prior to, I think it was 2012 that council last met and changed the rates for vehicle for hires, when we implemented a gas surcharge at that time. Part of that gas surcharge and that agreement with the taxi companies was renewing the chauffeur's permit every 3 years. I think it's needless and problematic, or the city of Columbia Police Department feels it's unnecessary to have them come back every 3 years for a new chauffeur's permit.
I was just curious, does a Uber driver have to do any of this stuff?
They do. And though they don't have to come to a police department, they are required prior to becoming, once they gain employment with a TNC, the Transportation Network Company, be it Uber, Lyft, or whatever other ones are out there, they have to do all the same stuff. They have a criminal background check, a sex registry offender check. They have to have, only difference with them, they have to have a certified mechanic, so it's actually probably costing them a significant amount for their inspections, whereas we do it free, our annual inspections.
We think the state literally mimicked our current.
It almost looks
policy.
verbatim.
That's why I was wondering if it was kind of, if you feel like it's kind of even in the playing field.
And what would you estimate? We have 50,
I think
50 taxis operating?
so, somewhere about 120. We have 398 in the state right now, taxis. I maintain correspondence with Office of Regulatory Safety at the Public Service Commission, and they provide lists to me regularly, to the Traffic Safety Unit of current and when there's a suspension of companies. And they have the same process for them. If their driving record shows things such as driving under influence, driving with an unlawful alcohol concentration, criminal histories with fraud, or using a motor vehicle to commit a felony involving property damage, basically things we're trying to keep the public safe with. Is the same reason that the city of Columbia will deny chauffeurs permits for things, criminal or traffic offenses of those natures.
So what I'm, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm hearing is that, like Uber, the Transportation Network, TNC.
Yes, sir. We call them rideshare to keep it simple.
They operate under those specific guidelines for both services.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's what I wanted to, I wanted to get, now that's overall.
That is through the entire state. So the Office of Regulatory Safety, which is a body within the PCS, Public Service Commission, they are the sole authority for regulating rideshare companies.
Okay.
So police officers, we can't, be it Richland County, City of Columbia Highway Patrol, we cannot inspect rideshare companies.
Can't be TCN.
Correct, it'll be Office of Regulatory Safety under that law.
I just did
There's
not,
very few things we can do with a rideshare company outside of normal traffic laws.
I tell you, I just did not want it to occur that both TCN and some else, some acronym
Yes, sir.
is doing the same thing under a different name.
No, so that is actually interestingly enough, one of the reasons the citizen came forward prior to the May committee meeting. He felt there was a lot of duplication. However, this entire title that covers motor carriers, Title 58, specifically prohibits Office of Regulatory Safety from regulating any of these laws in this title within a municipality. So they leave it up to each city and their corporate limits and bodies to decide how they wish to regulate them.
Okay.
Okay. So there is some duplication in the effect that if I want to work for cab company A, chances are I'm not going to operate just within the city of Columbia. I'm going to probably pick up people from a local airport
right.
or something and travel in and out the municipality boundaries. So there's regulations I would have to go through with Office of Regulatory Safety to get my permit with them. But I also need to come to the city of Columbia because once I'm in the city of Columbia, no regulation that they have am I bound by. So if we did away with everything completely, nothing at the state level would apply to them in the city of Columbia.
Okay.
I feel like this is a reasonable,
And we
And
still
change.
need regulation
Yeah.
to prevent
yeah.
past.
Really more,
such as-
we're really more interested in the driver as a driver than the driver as a person.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't think we should try to
Correct.
manage society, we should manage the driver.
So will this be then incorporated into a ordinance change language?
We would need to massively gut and alter 24 of the city ordinance.
Okay.
What's our timeline on our next round of taxi cab inspections?
We do our annual vehicle for hire inspections in conjunction with tax day. So first 2 weeks of April.
Well, that should give us time, because it would take 2 readings.
Taxi day.
And then for it getting in front of all of council by early next year.
And that's in conjunction with business licensing and
Yeah.
how they kind of linchpin off of what's
So collaboratively, it works together. Okay.
correct.
All right.
Correct.
Okay, let me ask you this, because in my booklet and in this sheet of paper that was passed out to me, it's different.
Yes, sir. So the first one I prepared, which would have been in your booklet.
This one, yeah.
Yes, sir. That was a comparison of, on the left is Office of Regulatory Safety, state level, and on the right, City of Columbia.
Okay.
Speaking with Chief this morning, just wanted a quick punchline of our current process. And that's the one we handed out with our current process on the left and the recommendations, what we would like to see on the right.
I think if we can get some proposed language at our, January or February meeting, we can then move it to all of council, if not before. I don't know how long it takes, so.
How long, Chief, you said something a few minutes ago in terms of time parameters.
I was asking Sergeant when the next scheduled inspection is, and that's what he was explaining was
We
tied into
definitely-
tax day. So we've got a little bit of a cushion. We'll have legal draft an ordinance for review
All right, good.
We have
with the recommendations.
a cushion in our annual vehicle for hire inspections.
Good.
If we needed more of a cushion, that's simply a phone call. We're gonna grant you a waiver for such and such
That seems to
period.
be plenty of time though.
I think we can get that done before April, yeah.
Agreed.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, folks.
Let me ask Peter, Auditor, any questions?
No, this is great. Thank you.
No questions? My goodness. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
All right, are we ready to dismiss?
Yes.
All right, move for dismissal.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
The moved and properly, consensually decided upon that we dismiss. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sir.
So just.